So let's talk about the power of purpose. And for those of you who are new to this channel, hi there, my name's Liz Campbell of Dynamic Intention. I'm an energy alchemist and I specialise in DNA activation, energetic structure and manifestation, as well as expansion of consciousness. So if these are subjects that you are not only interested in but actively pursuing greater awareness of, then this is probably why you've landed here. Okay, so purpose is a really interesting thing actually, because people have quite fixed ideas about what purpose actually means quite a lot of the time without actually understanding the kind of full breadth of the subject, so to speak, in terms of usually when you look at people who are talking about purpose, they're quite often addressing it from a very mental or mentally based perspective, and they're missing out a lot of the other components that actually kind of add in. Because my understanding of purpose from my own basic explorations of all of this stuff is that, and I have actually talked about this in some of the other videos here on this channel, my understanding of purpose is that in actual fact there's a very strong emotional energetic component to it that quite often gets missed by people who take what I would call sort of almost like a subservient sort of slave-based perspective on it, due to conditioning that they've had from institutions of various different sorts, possibly from societal conditioning, from peer group conditioning, from family conditioning, from school, and so on and so forth. I'm much more interested, and especially when I work with clients, in actually stripping all of that back and actually delving into the actual heart and soul of what it is that you're here for in terms of your energetic makeup. And that actually also includes things like what's going on with your DNA, the coding in that, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing I do understand very, very clearly is that everyone who lands on this planet basically not only has something that they've come here to express and to do and to experience in this lifetime, in terms of the people that they're here to connect with, the kind of change that they're here to bring, because in actual fact most people are here to create some kind of change, whether it's on a micro or a macro level, and there are usually challenges tied up with that, as well as the sort of more, I'm going to say the kind of more kind of glittery side of it, which is positive and so on and so forth. And a great deal of my work up to this point has actually been concerned with understanding all of this stuff, and also for those who have possibly been born into circumstances and families where things have been particularly challenging them for whatever reason. It could be, and this happens at all ends of society. It depends on mainly the attitudes of your parents and whether they have actually healed their childhood trauma or not, more than anything else. And trauma happens at all ends of society, not just at the poverty-stricken end. I just want to clear that one up right now, because there is a misconception, I think, that gets thrown around that people who are born with so-called silver spoons in their mouths have everything really rosy, and that they don't come up against any challenges at all, whereas in actual fact a lot of the time some of the people at the kind of what you would call, if you were looking at it from a class system point of view, the upper middle class end of society, have their own set of abandonment issues and wounding and yes, money stuff, all of the rest of it. It's just that because people who weren't born into those circumstances have a tendency to make assumptions, like it's a fairly standard human thing actually to make assumptions about people, right? That they must have had it really, really easy. But in actual fact, if you start to look at kind of the pathologies of a lot of the kind of, I'm going to say, like the upper end of society, when you actually know people who have been born with that so-called silver spoon in their mouth, most of the time you'll find out that their families are just as dysfunctional in different ways as the families of people born into more sort of straightened financial circumstances. So I do feel like part of my work here, in amongst all of the things, and there are many things I know that I'm here to do, part of my work here is to actually help people to understand the fact that just because someone's got more money in the bank, it doesn't mean to say that they're not that they're not actually suffering in any way, shape or form. The majority of human suffering is actually created through emotional distortions and that sense of feeling isolated, alone, misunderstood, so on and so forth. And that can happen at any income level. It doesn't matter what it is. That human condition thing of feeling misunderstood, feeling alienated, feeling like you have to fight for everything that you have, that happens at all ends of society. I speak here as someone who grew up in a one-parent family. My parents split up when I was 5, and having experienced lots of interesting stuff during my childhood due to my mum's choices, due to her choices of relationships and so on and so forth. At the same time, she was born into a so-called privileged family that had a lot of issues of its own, and all of my mother's trauma came from the fact that her family, despite having money and having privilege, inverted commas, was about as dysfunctional as it can get. And so, I know for me, my own journey in terms of understanding my purpose and so on and so forth has been about understanding my need to dismantle and alchemize the dysfunctional stuff and actually be the person within my family that decides not to just keep on doing the same old as everyone else does. I've had to address my own traumas, I've had to address my own challenges, I've had to address all of the things that in my life I haven't been happy with, basically, where things haven't been working the way that I wanted them to, in order to be able to actually move forwards in the way that I wanted to. Because the simple fact of the matter is, when you're born into any situation where your parents aren't actually happy within themselves, and they have children, or they get married and they quite often have children from a misguided sense that having those children and getting married will somehow heal and complete them, and they put that expectation onto the relationship and the kids without actually addressing their internal struggles, wounding and so on and so forth first. So they're externalizing and projecting their problems and expecting someone else to fix them from the point of view of like providing a relationship, unconditional love, so on and so forth. Those problems quite often become compounded. And this is something I've understood for myself because I've experienced it. My mother essentially had a very difficult relationship with her mother, and I do believe that she actually had me, partly because she was hoping that I would in some way heal her, make her whole again. And this is an interesting one actually, because I have plenty of friends and people that I've spoken to, no names mentioned here for the sake of confidentiality, who've experienced very, very similar upbringings. And it is something that does actually affect things like your self-confidence, your belief in your ability to manifest the life that you want, your belief in your own magic, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's so many things that can attach to this. A lot of our hustle culture in society comes from this sense of disconnection from self, due to the fact that we have been potentially brought up in a situation or a family where we would had it demonstrated to us the whole time that we weren't the chosen ones, if this makes sense. Now, I'm talking about this from the perspective of having witnessed, as a child, my parents choosing things that meant that I was either feeling abandoned, neglected, or rejected. Now, I'm sure many of you will have experienced the same thing. This is quite likely why you're here. The thing with this is that, you know, that might not have been the case necessarily from the point of view of the consciousness of the parent that was choosing the other things at the time. They might not have been aware of the fact that the choices they were making were actually affecting their kids in this way. I'm pretty sure that my mum didn't think of it that way, but the simple fact of the matter is, as a child, when you constantly see a parent choosing things over and above you, you make the assumption that you are somehow not as worthy as the thing being chosen. This is what happens. So it's really, really important to understand that one of the key things that you need to work out really in your, I'm going to say, your journey towards actually being able to fulfill your purpose and not doing it from a position of subservience, servitude, compliance, or slavishness, is that first step of actually not only understanding that you're worthy of love, but also understanding that you're worthy of respect, but also understanding that you are worthy of having what you desire without having to push for it, without having to hustle for it, without any of those things. Now, most of us have been trained that we have to work really hard for what we want because we're not worth it otherwise. This is a message that society puts out in all sorts of different ways. This is a message you probably learned from your parents. This is a message you probably learned from your school conditioning. This is a message that you've learned from pretty much every direction that you can think of. That's not actually truth. It's a subjective truth according to the deeply dysfunctional people that you've been interacting with have projected onto you, that you have accepted as a truth for yourself that's not actually true, and you've accepted it as a truth due to their behaviours towards you, due to the things that they've said, and so on and so forth, during a time when you weren't given the choice of anything else to believe, because you were small and you were trusting the adults around you to be giving you messages that were true. You were forming the basis of how your model of the world operated or operates based on the behaviours of the adults around you. And this is why working with the stuff from your childhood is such an important part of actually coming into alignment, not only with your purpose, but with your success, with your ability to manifest with ease, rather than it being some absolute shit show of difficulty and struggle and hard work and all of these things that we seem to think that manifestation entails. In actual fact, is nonsense. It's an illusion that we've bought into due to the fact that our beloved dysfunctional parents and families and schools and so on and so forth have all fed us this message based on their own dysfunction and not knowing any better. And I kind of feel like I'm the messenger here, telling you all of that stuff that you learned about not being worthy through their behaviours was literally just them passing on their damage to you. And you can change that, and we're actually going to do this today. If you bear with me during the course of this video, we are going to do this today with some energy work. We're going to start to clear some of this stuff up in here so that you can actually come into a greater sense of peace with yourself, peace with your purpose, and peace with your ability to take the right steps forward that are actually aligned for you without self-sabotaging and feeling like you're not worthy of taking them. Okay. And as I said, this is the work that I'm here to do. It's important, it's meaningful, and it's something that I have the desire to share with you, because I know how difficult it can be when you're stuck really hard in a cycle of self-sabotage, or when you're stuck doing things which are essentially done to please other people, but you're not feeling satisfied and you can't see the way out of actually being in the people pleasing, because you've been taught that like people pleasing is the only thing that makes you worthy through the actions, again, like I said. And we're not doing this from a sense of blame here, because you've got to understand that this issue, it's intergenerational. It's been passed down and down and down and down through your family, most likely. Now, I have probably a high sense that if you're listening to this, you probably had quite a lot of messages coming at you from all different directions when you were a kid about the fact that you weren't worthy, that the adults were more worthy, that their choices were more important, and so on and so forth. And that inner child within you, if you're still carrying wounding, is still going to be operating under that illusory notion that you are not as important, that you're not enough, etc., etc. And the work that we're going to be doing a little bit later on, the energy work, is going to actually start to alchemize that and set you straight in terms of like the actual truth of who you are, because that's important. Okay, and that is the thing that like gives you the strong solid foundations to be able to leap off into expanding your consciousness further, into expressing more of who you are, and so on and so forth. When you are in a space of not believing yourself to be worthy, of not believing yourself to be magic within your own right, you have a tendency usually to literally sabotage whenever you're faced with, or whenever you're given opportunities to improve, because there's some level of fear about what that might mean in terms of upsetting the people around you, because there's usually something connected to it. Every time you tried to assert yourself when you were a kid and stand up for yourself, you were probably knocked back by the dysfunctional adults around you and told that you weren't worthy of it, and da 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 da. Do you see what I'm saying? So, you know, let's get into actually addressing the foundations of this stuff today, because, like I said, because it's important, and because in actual fact we're looking at the results side of things, and like what is possible for you. Your potential cannot be realised whilst you're still carrying around the idea that you're not worthy of your full potential. So this is what needs to shift. One of the things that I do when I'm working with clients now is actually look at what it was that their soul wanted to experience when they actually landed in this lifetime. The reason I do this is because I've looked at it for myself, and there are certain tools that I use in order to be able to do this, and then I pair the understanding that comes through from that with the energy work that I have developed over the course of the past few years, which I refer to as the science of creating miracles. It's simply a name that I have put on the process that I use, which is very specific and unique to me, that I actually use to alchemize everything that is in the way of them actually living the life that they've come here to live. Now, I'm not going to be going into the whole thing with you guys today, but we are going to start chiseling away through the work contained in this video. And what I'm going to also say as well is that if you are listening to and watching this video now, and you do the energy work and you're feeling a strong call afterwards to actually connect more fully with my work, then you can find all of the details that you need of the various different ways that you can do that in the information that's in or around this video somewhere. If it's on YouTube that you're watching this, you're going to find it in the drop down box underneath. You just click on the little downwards pointing chevron, as it were, a little arrow underneath the video, and it will basically open up that information box, and there are links in there for you to be able to have a look at my website, come and see what I'm up to on Facebook, so on and so forth. There's links in there for the free group that I run on Facebook. There's also going to be links that you will find that will connect you with the information about my mastermind group, which is where I teach all of this stuff. Now, you might not be in the ballpark of actually wanting to learn about this stuff, but all of the work that's actually in digital format on my website does actually address various different things. So it's a good idea, if you're feeling drawn towards what I'm saying here and what you're actually experiencing through the work that I'm doing in this video, go and have a look to see if there's stuff that is relevant to the kind of issues that you want to be delving more into, having the understanding of. The thing about the work that I do is that the energy work, actually what it does is it opens up your self-awareness as well as clearing things up. So you're going to start to have more understanding just even by working with the digital products, and it's important for you to understand that. It's about me helping you to clear out the fog, as it were, the stuff that's causing you to not have the clarity that you might desire on what your next move is, what your next step forwards is, what's been getting in your way, so on and so forth. So all of that's worth looking at. I will also invite you, if you want to get in touch with me, to send me a message either via Facebook Messenger or one of the other social media messenger services connected to my social media accounts, or to send me an email to liz@dynamicintention.net. And what I will say right now is that you will also find after this energy work that's included in this video today, which is going to help you to start getting more coherent with your actual soul purpose, and it's going to clear out some of the stuff that's been presenting challenges for you, whether those challenges have been coming in through experiences from your childhood or unfortunate experiences from school, so on and so forth. Quite a lot of the societal conditioning that we receive does actually get in the way of us being able to connect with our purpose, because it's almost like we adopt a shell personality just in order to survive the adults and the societal structures around us, and we end up as a result of that getting confused. So the first step is always to clear that stuff out so that you can actually start to connect with a deeper sense of what it is that you're really here for, actually being able to connect into your heart without having to kind of like muddle your way through and go, right, I know I'm feeling this, but in actual fact I'm finding it very difficult to get out of my head. It's something that I've experienced for myself, something that I know a lot of my clients have experienced, is that kind of thing of living in your head and not being fully connected to your body, possibly because of some form of trauma from when you're a kid to do with not feeling safe in your body. Now, there's any number of things that could be attached to that, and I'm not going to project onto you what I think they might be, but you'll know if what I'm saying right now is actually relevant to you. That sense of not feeling safe in your body is actually one of the biggest reasons why people go into what I would call survival mode, defense mechanisms and operations, and start operating from a space of people pleasing or massive defensiveness, or almost trying to hide from actually being who they've come here to be, because of the fact that it doesn't feel safe to do so, because of having been targeted as a kid at school, maybe being bullied, maybe being abused by a family member, something along those lines. There are so many things that can happen to us when we're young that can cause all sorts of problems going forwards, with us actually being like super clear on why we're here, what we actually want for ourselves, that actually feels good and actually feels nourishing, because we end up in this situation where we're actually kind of more expecting the worst to happen on some level, and we're constantly trying to hide ourselves and defend ourselves from potential attack. And you can't be everything that you've come here to be if you're constantly like hiding behind a gigantic suit of armor, if that makes any sense. So really, truly, the work, when it comes to purpose work, it's about dropping the armor and doing it in such a way that you feel safe. And that is effectively what a large amount of my work's about. I say this because this is something I've had to do for myself in different situations, basically, and understanding where I haven't been lined up with what I've wanted for myself, because on some level there's been part of me that's been trying to defend me from the potential fallout of me being successful or whatever it is that I've wanted, because there's been a perception of danger attached to the thing that I want. And this is in actual fact most of the time the biggest problem that people have with manifesting what they truly desire that's actually satisfying to them, is the fact that the thing that's going to feel the most satisfying to them has got a perception of danger attached to it because of something that we experienced when we were younger that we didn't process out properly and fully, and that we ended up effectively sort of mutating ourselves around in order to try to stay safe. There's so much that I could talk about with this in relationship to actually how your DNA and genes adapt to respond essentially to survival-based situations and traumas, as well as the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and so on and so forth. What I'm going to say for now is that essentially all of this stuff can be changed. There is nothing that's off limits to you, but the ultimate thing that you always need to understand is that you're never going to feel satisfied manifesting things that aren't actually fully soul aligned for you, and your soul does have a very clear idea of what it wants to experience in this lifetime. And if you're not feeling like you're tapped into what that is, there's usually big reasons for that schism, as it were, that disconnect that's going on. And essentially the work that we're here to start off now with, the energy work that's coming up soon, as it were, and all of the work that I do in my mastermind program and all of the stuff that I put out is about basically building that bridge so that you actually understand yourself better and can make those, I'm going to say, soul aligned choices from a space of feeling safe, secure, peaceful, happy, joyful about it, rather than shit scared, essentially. And as I was saying at the start of all of this, this is something that in actual fact, the trauma that stops you from being connected, it spans all ages, income brackets, all the rest of it. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've experienced things for myself. I've seen other people experiencing things. I've spent a good deal of time sort of observing the ways in which people can be deeply traumatized about various different things, and also, apparently on the outside of things on top of the world and doing really well for themselves, but in actual fact inside really not happy, really not feeling connected, really not actually aligned with what they're here for. So this isn't something that is like class dependent at all. This spans all ends of society, because we've been living in a very disconnected way for a very long time, and I feel like my work is here to help create bridges in various different ways, bridges between people, connections, and like bridging the gap of understanding we have of ourselves, and so on and so forth. I'm looking forward to hearing in the comments below how you experienced the work that you're about to experience. And what I will say now is, if you take some deep breaths in and out, close your eyes, relaxing and just allowing yourself to receive the work that's in this, that I'm going to refer to as the science of experiencing deeper connection with your purpose. And like I said, this is a beginning step, okay? This isn't the whole thing. I'm not going to make it too easy for you, she said. At the end of the day, you are responsible for deciding to actually move forwards for yourself. But this is helping to get things started off, and you're very welcome to connect with me about working with me further in some capacity, or just follow your intuition after this, and move forwards in a way that's actually useful for you. And what I will add in as well is I'm going to stick some journal prompts in the drop down box underneath this on YouTube, so you can actually check that for the journal prompts that you can actually then work with, actually responding to, sitting down with a journal, free writing the answers that want to come through, and taking some internal direction for yourself from all of this. Okay, so just relaxing yourself, making yourself nice and comfortable. You can lie down for this if you want to. You don't have to be looking at the screen. And allowing yourself to receive.